Hi, everyone. Thanks for attending our webinar today on building an effective employee security awareness program. Well, this is the overall agenda. We're going to go with an introduction. Next, we're going to talk about why you need employee security awareness training. And then we're just going to give you an overview of the security awareness program overall, and talk about some of the details regarding development, delivery, and ongoing training and updates. And lastly, we're going to talk about the compliance and measurement of performance of the training. So I'm Al Abbas, and I work in the security and risk practice at BizTech, and we help clients with a variety of security and risk management areas as well as internal audit. Now, why do you need security awareness training? Well, you can have as many firewalls or other security measures such as IDS, intrusion detection, intrusion prevention systems, and the latest and greatest technology that you have available can be put on your technology, computers, and network devices, but that still does not prevent an employee or a user putting confidential data on a flash drive and taking it out accidentally, not knowing what the sensitivities are of the information, and losing that flash drive. That's just one example. We've seen a lot of cases from the different audits and reviews that we've performed where sometimes an employee would put a confidential HR file on a shared folder that's available and visible to all employees, and that created a big privacy issue for the organization. Another example is when people are traveling, employees may lose a laptop when they're traveling, and they may have inadvertently kept some confidential information on their computer, which they were not supposed to, just because even if you have the right policies in place, you may not have the training time allocated for training, so the employees just didn't know that that they were not supposed to put the information on their laptops. So again, so the examples we have listed in the slide just kind of talk a little more about that. We've seen employees just, example, banking, in the banking sector, financial sector, customer goes to the to renew an RRSP or get a mortgage refinancing done. You're at the bank. The CSR, or customer service representative, may not be too well trained on security awareness or PI, personally identified information, PII. And as an example, there was a case where the advisor wasn't really aware of all these training requirements or the security requirements, and they just they printed something that was not really needed, and they had some extra printouts which had PII information, personally identified bill information. So instead of putting the documents in the shredder, they put it in recycling. So it's just another example. And the last one most people know about, where users click on email links and get compromise not only their own machine but their network, and sometimes even give away the username password to these phishing or spear phishing emails. Now, security awareness training is also a requirement if you are required to be compliant with PCI DSS, Payment Card Industry Data Security Standard. You need to have a security awareness training program. And just to elaborate on that, many merchants think that they've bought a PIN device or the payment devices that they have and the devices and the software is PCI compliant would automatically make them PCI DSS compliant, and that's completely incorrect. For them to be PCI DSS compliant, they have to incorporate PCI DSS requirements on their own side, not just by purchasing the technology that is PCI DSS compliant would make them, the organization or the merchant compliant themselves. And another is many organizations and service providers get the ISO 27001 certification, and they're required to be having a security awareness program for that as well. But aside from these compliance requirements, it's just a good practice to have in place. It reduces the risk to the organization, and again, it's good for the management and executives, and especially to have employees that are well trained in security awareness. The next slide, number 5. So what should a security awareness training program have, or generally security awareness program, and how to do it? So the best practice is to first start with a risk and needs assessment. So you need to have a security awareness training that is focused on the risks specific to that organization or your organization. So so basically what you're saying is don't, there's a lot of different trainings online. You can pull something up and make it available, and users will just, go through because they're required to go through, and they will not have any interest, and they'll feel it's a waste of time. Because that training that you see online, typically a CBT or a generic training, is not customized and does not relate to the users that you have, because it's very generic and it doesn't relate, the users just cannot relate to how it affects them in their business. So the best practice is to do a risk assessment and need assessment, assess what are the sensitive data, the processes and activities relevant to your organization and to the user, and then based on that create a security awareness training that is customized for the organization and for the user. So it's branded for your organization, and it talks about the processes that your employees, or basically the different user types. So you'd have either for example, financial user, sales user if they're handling information. So you can have different types of security awareness program, and typically what we see is best practices to have between 3 to 5 user type security awareness trainings customized for the different user types. And one common is across the board all user types, and the other is financial user. We see that in procurement as well, and then an executive user would have confidential information, and lastly the IT user or privileged users who have access, or super user admin access. We've seen cases where the security policy that an organization had requirements for password changes, and when we were doing an audit of the privileged user or database admin, he wasn't even aware of what are the password complexity requirements for a privileged user. So it was just something was there in policy, but it was not even known by a privileged user who had basically God level access to the organization's most sensitive systems. So that's where security awareness training is very important, and it should be it should have material that's relevant to the job function, activities, and data handled by the employer user. And the best practice to measure the quality of the delivery and have an assessment of how much of the training did the user understand is to have a quiz. And most of the security awareness training programs that we deliver, one important piece of the training is the user goes through video, slides, and audio presentations. At the end of the training, they get a quiz randomly selected from a database of questions, and they have to take the quiz and have to score. Typically, what we see is we recommend having an 80% pass rate. So once they pass the quiz, they're compliant, and they've received that certification of passing, and that's done at the time they get hired, as well as on an ongoing basis. And we'll talk a little more about that. So other components of the security awareness training program or security awareness program in general include posters, flyers, email communication on an ongoing basis. So we find too much gets tuned out and too little is forgotten. So the best optimum, what we find is, well, posters you can put in depending on the particular organization in the facilities, you would put posters and flyers accordingly. But then the email communications, you would ideally you'd send it quarterly. But then if you have if there's a new risk or a new threat that's come in the organization that's relevant to the organization, it's good to communicate that right away as soon as it's known. And should also tie in, the security awareness program should tie in with the organization's incident management program, so that if there's new incidents that have happened, there should be learning done from them and then should be transmitted to other organizations. So, for example, if somebody shares data that they shouldn't have shared, some employee or user puts some confidential data or some data that was supposed to be not made public, so that was an incident. It should be recorded, should be logged, and there should be training a component from the learning lessons that were taken from the incident. So the overall security awareness program should have a schedule. So how often? It could be 6 months, every 6 months, or yearly training, and there should be metrics for measurement of the program. So percent of users or employees who have completed the training. And one example of metrics is phishing. So before start of the training, we've done a simulated phishing attack on the organization. So set of users get emails to click on a link, and that's all simulated. So it's to assess how easily those set of users get compromised. And then you see what is the percentage of users compromised before they receive training, and the percentage of users compromised after they receive the training. And it's simulated phishing, so you send a link and ask the user to click on the link, or sometimes when they click on the link, they can be directed to the training site, or sometimes when they click on the link, we can even ask them to put in some data, and then we can track who clicked on the link on a fake link, and then who clicked on a data site. We can just simulate like any banking site or Facebook site or any other site or internal company site, and see if somebody gets compromised based on a phishing email. And phishing is basically users getting an email by, generally what happens is you get a lot of emails and people want you to click on the link, and when you click on the link, they try to grab your data, or they try to put a virus on your machine or on your network. Once your machine is compromised, your network may potentially get compromised as well. So simulated phishing is where it's under controlled conditions. We send out an email, and it's mostly many times it's part of a social engineering audit that we perform for organizations, and we want to assess the level of awareness that the users have and the level of risk that the organization in general has if they get compromised, and how strong and robust their internal security is against social engineering attacks. So now moving on to the next slide about training program updates. So once, let's say you're starting out, you've set up your security awareness training program. It's well structured. You can have computer-based, webinar-based, or in-person delivery of the training sessions. And user or employee, when they get hired, they have to go through the training. On an annual basis, they have to go through the same training again. But then you don't expect them to get the same training again and again and take the same course every year. Now, many organizations want them to take the same training and give them different questions, the quiz at the end to assess how well they know. And that's okay as well. It's because many times you take a training and you forget, and it's just a matter of reminder and making sure you're kind 100% compliant and all the employees have received the training. But there has to be a good update mechanism. So over the year or past 6 months, whatever your frequency you've determined based on management discussion, risks, and the budget, you can update the security awareness training based on the incidents that the organization has had, any incidents. Other factors that come into the picture are new risks and threats that are out there in your industry or in the business environment in general, and risks introduced based on the changes to the organization's environment. For example, new systems, new technology, changes to the systems. Using cloud-based services comes with its own risks, and other areas include new rules, regulations, privacy laws, CASL, which is the Canadian anti-spam regulation, came into effect. So these are some of the things you need to keep in account. PIPA is a British Columbia's Personal Information Privacy Act, or FOIPA, which is the federal for public sector organizations. So keeping that into account. And then new contractual responsibilities of the organization. So we have many clients where we see they have contracts with other, like their clients, other businesses, and they are required contractually to maintain confidentiality, security, or integrity of client data as well as other internal data. So based on new contracts, there may be other stipulations. So organizations would sign those things that they will keep these X, Y, and Z or Z data confidential. But it's just left in the contract, and many times what you've seen is that the operational staff don't know what the requirements for security and confidentiality and integrity and availability are. So the security awareness training is a time where the information in these documents should be extracted, and whatever the operational staff need to know should be given to them during the security awareness training program. Now, before we move on to this slide 7, training based on user types, one aspect that I'd like to talk a little more about is about the amount of time, effort, and cost for security awareness training. Now, nothing protects the organization 100%. If somebody wants to get in, they will find a way to get in. But, it's just like leaving a door locked versus unlocked. So you want to put as much as possible within the budget, and there's always a cost benefit. You can have as many controls as you want, but at a certain amount, beyond a certain point, it might cost more to put security controls than the perceived benefit. So there is always that optimum level where you want to have adequate security, but not spend too much in a way that you spent more than what you would get in terms of the perceived benefit of having the security in place. So the right amount is basically whatever is adequate to protect the organization, and it's different based on the level of data and the sensitivities for for each organization. And some of the other benefits include, especially for senior management and executives, we've seen a lot of cases such as at Sony and many others where it's just simple security awareness that if somebody had received that, in Sony's case, it was just the person who kept all the passwords in a password file, a basic password file, and didn't protect the file with any other, did not encrypt the file. If they had just received this basic level of training, things would have been much different for Sony. So that's just one example. Snowden examples, default passwords, even the U.S. government, DOD, kept things in their default servers, had like critical servers which should have confidential information, which had confidential information had default passwords. So these basic things, even the IT users did not follow, or maybe they were good IT systems admins, but they were not security experts. So using default passwords is absolute no-no, but still people do it because it's just a matter of things falling through the cracks, or people not having received the security awareness training. So, and having done that, even if after doing all of these measures you get compromised, the organization gets compromised, a lot of CEOs and CIOs get fired. We've seen that happen at various organizations such as Target and others. So the management can have something to show that you've done your due diligence, but again, nothing can be fully protected, but having done this training, security audit, security awareness program, and all these are measures that can demonstrate to shareholders, board of directors, and the customers that the management did their level best to protect customer and internal employee and organization data to the best they could. So next slide, 7, training based on user type. So I touched a little bit. So these are some examples of different user types for which customized training should be developed. And again, it would be different for different organizations, and this is just a reference point. Now, security awareness training metrics, these are some of the examples. I touched a little bit on this earlier. Percentage of employees, users completed and passed the training, percentage that have not taken training, and again, percentage of users compromised with simulated phishing, percentage of users compromised with simulated phishing after training. So these are just examples, and you can have more metrics. Number of examples listed on what security awareness training program, what are the typical metrics that the security awareness training program should have, and that's a good reference as well. But these are good starting points. And the way this helps is that this is sort of a security one of the measures of security performance indicator for an organization. So you will or your management will know, will be able to kind of put a metric on overall security posture of the organization, and these could be some of the metrics that would be coming off to determine the posture. Some of the other examples include like number of devices that have been patched, or number of devices not patched, and percentage of devices with antivirus updates. So you can have as many different metrics to determine the overall security position, or the security risk indicator, or for the organization. And this typically fits into the overall performance indicators for security. This is a very brief overview. Again, for any questions, we have the link about BizTech's security awareness program services. We have some time for questions. You can send a question over chat or email. The email you can send it to is info@biztechmasters.com. Okay, so we've got a question about the typical cost for a security awareness program. The cost varies. Again, the key steps include starting off with risk and needs assessment. So, and again, depends on the number of users, size of the organization, the business organization is in. But what we find as typical is between 10 to 15,000 a starting point for up to 200 to 500 employee organization, and it's again, it varies based on the locations and size. So that's the general what we've seen. And again, the risk assessment also aligns with ISO 27001 to an organization need to get to that level when we perform the risk assessment. It's aligned with ISO 27001 or risk assessment methodology. So it's asset-based risk assessment. So again, if you have any other questions, you can always send an email. My email is listed over here. That's aabbas@biztechmasters.com, or you can call us at the number listed here at 1-888-666-1745. And further details about, we have a good write-up on security awareness training and how it should be delivered at our service listing page. That's listed on the link here. And you can definitely get more info there or send us an email. Thanks everyone for your time, and this wraps up our webinar on security awareness training program development. Bye-bye.